Hi everybody, this is Terry South, licensed therapist in the state of Minnesota. Welcome to another video about mental health and feelings. Today we are going to talk a little more about two feelings that I get a lot of complaints about. And that is fear, aka anxiety, and also anger, aka irritation. So together I call these two the adrenaline twins. And that's for a very important reason. These are the two feelings that, more than any other, are connected to your adrenaline system. So to find out why that would be, let's talk for just a second. Remember in the first video, do I really need to have feelings? We talked a little bit about what each of these feelings is for. So do you happen to remember? Fear is for what? Okay, so fear's job is to warn you of danger, right? Fear is not cowardice. Fear is just that voice in the back of your head that says, that's dangerous, don't do it, or just look out. Fear is a very, very important feeling. It can be everything from running away from a rabid dog to paying your rent so that you don't become homeless. Fear does a lot for us, even though it's not always very powerful. And then there's anger. What was anger for? So anger's job is to tell you to defend yourself. Or, because we're a social species and we live in communities and we have to raise our young and all of this other stuff, sometimes it's to defend other people. Or sometimes it's even to defend your ideals, things that you believe in, because again, we're a community living species. So we have these two feelings that are both about protection. And if they sound kind of familiar, if you've ever heard the phrase fight or flight, that's what we're talking about here. Fight would be anger. Defend, right? Something's coming at me, I'm going to do something about it. And then flight, get away, evade, go away from the danger so that I don't get hurt. These are two pretty basic and very, very important tactics in a life or death scenario. If there's something coming at me that's dangerous, most of the time, I'm going to have an impulse to do at least one of these two things. It's important to point out here that because these are such basic life-preserving impulses, they're very, very old. Okay, this predates humanity. These impulses are all over the animal kingdom. You can see it in a fish. You can see it in a squirrel. All over the animal kingdom, which means they're really important, very ancient, very hard to ignore, and not always very smart. These emotions are calibrated largely for life or death scenarios. At least their extreme end is calibrated for life or death scenarios. So let's look for a second at what adrenaline actually does, because adrenaline is an amazing chemical made naturally by your body to save you when you're in danger. So if you've ever had a rush of adrenaline, you probably remember it pretty clearly. Oftentimes you feel hot, your heart's going really fast, your lungs are working overtime. And what adrenaline does is it sends a whole lot of your body's resources, blood and oxygen and nutrients and calories, to mostly your muscles, okay? So that you will be stronger, faster. It also helps you ignore pain, which is really useful because if you've ever been in, say, a car accident or a fight, and it's not until later you look down and go, oh my gosh, my leg is bleeding. I didn't know I was injured. Because if you're trying to get out of a life-threatening scenario, you don't probably have the luxury of worrying about a scrape on your leg. So your brain is just going to say, nope, we're going to filter all that out. We're not going to worry about that cut on the leg. We'll worry about that later when we're out of the life or death scenario. It also kicks in when you're getting a tattoo, actually, which I find really helpful. So I'll be sitting there going, ow, 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 ow. Oh, the adrenaline's kicked in. My body's registered I'm in pain and kicked in that adrenaline, and now my tattoo is hurting a lot less. If you've ever read a news article or seen something on TV about a 90-year-old great-grandmother lifted up the tail end of a car to get her grandson out from underneath it, and everyone's going, oh, wow, how could she do that? She's so small, she's so far. That was adrenaline. It made her stronger. It made her faster. It put all of her energy into those muscles. and removed the brakes that pain is supposed to give us to say, no, don't do that, you're going to hurt yourself, to save the day. That's pretty amazing. But the thing is, because that takes a lot of your resources, if you ever had crash after adrenaline where you're really, really tired, what we realize is those resources have to come from somewhere. For my body to give that to my muscles, it's got to take it from someplace. And there's a couple of places that it pretty reliably takes from. One is digestion. So, not digesting while I'm in a life or death scenario. My body's just going to put all that on hold. Half-digested food, we'll get to you later. You're not a priority right now. We're just going to stop digesting for a little bit, which is why your stomach can be upset afterwards if you've had a really stressful thing as your digestive system tries to kick back on. Another is your immune system. So fighting that cold, not a priority if I'm fighting a mugger at the same time. That's going to shut off for a little while. Systems of healing, going to shut off. So if you're in stressful situations often, you'll know that things like a bruise on your leg might take a really long time to heal because you keep shutting off your immune system and your healing systems. You might find that you have digestive problems more often. You might find that you catch every bug that comes around because your immune system keeps getting shut off. If you live a very high stress life, probably your physical health is going to suffer for it because these systems keep shutting down on you. And then they have to try and re-engage and catch up whatever they had to be doing that they didn't have a chance to do. But the thing most people notice that gets shut off when adrenaline comes up is actually right up here. Okay, so this part of your brain right here is really, really important. It is responsible for a lot of language. So speaking, if you've ever been too scared or too angry to speak, guess what? It's because adrenaline had been high enough that it was pulling resources from right up here in your frontal lobe. It is also a lot of memory happens there. Impulse control hangs out right up here. And any skill you ever learned in therapy for managing anxiety or anger probably stored right up here. So why is that important? Well, that's important because I've had a lot of people come into my office and complain, well, I've had anger management, I've had anxiety management, it didn't work. I still keep having these panic attacks, or I still keep losing my temper. Well, here's the deal. By the time your adrenaline is fully kicked in, when you're really under that stress, if this is shut off, you don't have access to it anymore. It's like trying to find a single sheet in a file cabinet in a room with no windows with the lights off. You're not going to find it. I want to talk a little bit about how stress works and how this isn't totally bad news, because there is a way to get around this problem. You'll probably notice that other people that you've known have been able to get around it. So let me tell you how they do it. And to do that, we're going to talk a little bit about stress and trauma. So here we have a stress thermometer. Down here at the bottom at the 0 is completely relaxed, just utterly relaxed, not a care in the world. And you can't live down there because if you remember from the previous video about what feelings are for, you actually need to have some of these negative feelings in order, they have to kick in now and then to protect you, to take care of you, to help you, to motivate you to do the things that you need to do. But it's nice to be able to go down there now and then because that is when your body can do a lot of healing, a lot of recovering, a lot of very important work that's very good for your body. Way up at the top here, we're going to call that the adrenaline zone. And right up here, we're going to call that blackout. I am so panicked or I'm so furious that I am blacked out what I'm doing. This is when I'm going to tend to do things I regret, when I'm going to tend to run from things I can't afford to run from, start fights I can't win, do things that are not actually going to do well for me in the long term. Now, the average person whose life isn't all that stressful probably lives most of the day kind of in this zone. So they're feeling pretty relaxed, and then someone cuts them off in traffic at work and it comes up a little bit, but then they have a nice breakfast and it comes down a little, but then some coworker says something jerky and it goes back up again. They kind of go up and down in that range throughout the day. If you have lived a life where you were often at risk, you were often in danger, or you didn't know if you were going to have a safe place to stay, or you didn't know if you would have food, or if the people around you were threatening to you in some way, your system has probably learned to live more like up in this area. Now, that's your brain trying to keep on the lookout for danger. Again, remember, your feelings are only trying to help you. But that means you only have this much space between average day of not too great and when you get into that panic or rage zone where you can't think clearly and your skills are no longer accessible to you. So when I hear people say that they go from 0 to 100, a lot of people tell me that they go from 0 to 100 really quickly. They don't have time to work on these skills. My initial thought is usually they probably haven't seen 0 in years. Take a second to think about it. When was the last time that sober you felt totally relaxed? If you don't remember a whole lot of moments of relaxation, or if they weren't real recent, then chances are you haven't been down to 0 in a while. What that means is probably what you need to do is not just learn more coping skills, not just learn more anxiety management and anger management skills, but get down that ambient stress, that day-to-day stress, so that you're living down in this zone instead of way up in this zone. Because if you're down in this zone here, you have all this space to use those coping skills. But if I live at a 6 or 7, then I'm not going to think to use my coping skills at a 5 or 6. I'm going to wait until I'm at a 9, and then I have very little time and very little leeway to get those skills to actually work. We need to be using them way earlier. So why does our brain do this? Why does it take resources from my brain, which I need, to try and keep me alive? I need my brain. I'm using that. Okay, well, let's look for a second at our imaginary shared caveman ancestor. Our imaginary shared caveman ancestor is walking through the ancient forest and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out. Well, if our imaginary shared caveman ancestor says, "Oh, will you look at that? It seems to be a saber-toothed tiger. Oh gosh, it looks kind of hungry. Gosh, what are you supposed to do with these? Do you climb a tree, or maybe you run in a zigzag pattern? Maybe I should call someone? What's happened by now?" Well, they've been eaten. That's not a great outcome. My guess is you would like to not be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So instead, what our system does is our imaginary shared caveman ancestors walking through the woods, and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out, and they are running before they've even thought about what that is, right? That's the startle reflex. Okay, my body's going to engage and get me moving before I even know exactly what the threat is. So it's going to bypass this brain. It's going to shut down all this reasoning, cut out the noise to try and keep me alive. And if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, I bet that works great. Unfortunately, most of our stress in a day-to-day life doesn't work that way anymore. The stressors that we have are usually not immediately life-threatening. Usually, they're more useful to have my brain on than to have my muscles working at superhuman capacity. So, when I'm working with people about anxiety and anger, it's not just about how to avoid that top little piece. It's about how to cope with anger and anxiety in the moment to prevent you from getting to that point where your body has decided, screw thinking, we're in survival mode. Because survival mode is great if there's someone coming at you with a knife or really long saber-toothed tiger tusks, or teeth, or whatever. It doesn't work for if I'm worried about my taxes. It's probably not going to help me with my landlord. It's almost certainly not going to help me when my child is throwing a temper tantrum. We still need those feelings because they can still motivate us to handle problems. We just need to make sure we're doing it with our brains turned on. So instead of just this, we've got this engaged. So as always, I'm going to close by asking you that if this seems like something that you're struggling with, please reach out. There are lots of people like me who would love to help you. All you have to do is contact one of us. Thank you.